lecture, we will introduce the basic of controlling the EVMS, Earned Value Management System, starting from the time phase budget. Building the BCWS is a very important step for controlling, even though it is mainly a planning activity. It is summarizing, in its last point, the two main variables we should consider: the duration, T, and the cost of the project, also known as BAC, or budget at completion. Once we got the BCWS, T, and the BAC, we can really start doing the project and controlling it. As we mentioned in the lectures on planning, controlling is a recursive activity, which will happen many times over the project. Therefore, let's set that we are controlling the project in a given time, which we call Tn, time now. We need to know something more to understand how the project is going, how much resources we consumed during the project so far. Therefore, we introduce a second curve, called ACWP, Actual Cost of Work Performed. The ACWP considers the work that we have actually done and the actual cost of the resources we used. This simple statement is saying two relevant things. First of all, we may have not done the things exactly as we planned them. So we may have not finished activities that we plan to finish, or even having started activities planned for later. Second, we consider all the usage of resources and their cost on the basis of estimations, but now we know the actual cost of resources and the actual consumption. Having this in mind, we can calculate the actual cost of the work that we have actually done in the project. Let's make an example. In time now, the BCWS tells us that we've planned to work for 500, while the work that we have done with the actual cost we used says that the project has already used 700. In our example, we are spending more than we planned. So what does this mean? Is this a good or a bad news? Well, we don't know. The point is, why have we spent more than what we planned? What's the reason behind it? If we spend at a certain point half of the budget, that doesn't mean that we did half of the job. These two numbers cannot be compared directly because we change both the kind of work measured, from work scheduled to work performed, and the kind of cost considered, from budgeted cost to the actual cost. We cannot say which is the driver of the gap among the two numbers. So there might be different reasons why the actual cost is higher than the budget cost at a certain point. And the reasons are, first, that we did the work we had to do, but we spent more. So in this case, we are inefficient, so we are spending too much for the work we are doing. But on the other side, we could have anticipated some cost. So, for example, I've got an activity that could start today, but planned to start in the future, but for any reason it started, so I anticipated a part of the work. In this case, I will see that I spend more, but it's not really more, I'm just spending earlier. I'm anticipating a part of my cost. There's no way to understand if the project is going well or not just by comparing the BCWS and the ACWP. We need a third line, which can be directly compared with these two. Therefore, we need to create the BCWP, acting as a reference point to compare the other two. BCWP means budgeted cost of work performed. Keeping one of the variables, time or cost, equal to one of the two other curves. This means that we value the work we have actually done through the cost we have estimated and budgeted for those activities, no matter if we had differences in the actual cost. Let's pretend, in our example, to have a BCWP which equals 200. What I can do is now to compare the BCWP and the ACWP. These two curves consider the same amount of work, the work performed. Therefore, the only reason that can explain the difference is cost-related. Therefore, if I have ACWP equals to 700 and BCWP equals 200, it means that, given the work I've actually done, I've spent more than the expectation. It means that the project is inefficient. Similarly, I can compare the BCWP with the BCWS. In this case, both of them consider budget cost. So the driver of difference is the amount of work done. In the example, we have BCWS equals 500 and BCWP equals 200. This means that, considering budget cost, I should have spent more than I've actually done, which means I've done less work and the project is late. So this example is both inefficient and late, spending more for less work done, the worst situation possible. Let's make another simple example, where we still have ACWP equals 700 and BCWS equals 500, but the BCWP now equals 600. In this case, we still would have an ACWP higher than the BCWP, and therefore an inefficient project. But this time, we would have a BCWP higher than the BCWS, which means that we have done more work and therefore we are early on the schedule. In this case, the difference that we would have seen at the beginning between the ACWP and the BCWS is partially due to cost inefficiency and partially due to a faster schedule. To sum up, you compare both the original curves with the BCWP. In particular, the BCWP and the BCWS for the time, and the BCWP and the ACWP for the cost.